Hello, welcome to the library lived in. I'm Lisa, and this is
Anise.
And we're so excited to be here this evening to chat about Mr. Monday, which is the first book in the Keys to the Kingdom series by Garth Nix. Did I say it right? Garth Nix. All right. Should we start with the stars? What will you rate it?
I give it 3 stars. Well, we'll talk about it all when we talk about the plot and the characters and everything. I liked it. It reminded me actually of several other books, so I don't know that I would actually go back and read it again. Because the books it reminded me of, I actually like better. But it was a solid 3.
Okay. There you go. I was leaning. I'm going to go with a 4. I wouldn't buy it, but seeing as it's a series of 7, and knowing if I don't read the other ones right away, it's one that I would go back and read again so that I can have the whole experience together. It's well written. I enjoyed it, but I do feel like it's a little bit geared a little bit younger than his other series that we read. And so I felt like I could wander a little bit. I didn't have to be quite glued to it as much as I had to be the other one. So kind of in there in the middle. All right. Summary. Actually, I should have started with the summary, but I'm going to read the back of the book here.
Okay.
All right. On the first day, there was mystery. Arthur Penhaligon is not supposed to be a hero. He is, in fact, supposed to die an earthly death. But then his life is saved by a key shaped like the minute hand of a clock. Arthur is safe, but his world is not. Along with the key comes a plague brought by bizarre creatures from another realm. A stranger named Mr. Monday, his avenging messengers with blood-stained wings, and an army of dog-faced fetchers will stop at nothing to get the key back, even if it means destroying Arthur and everything around him. Desperate, Arthur ventures into a mysterious house, a house that only he can see. It is in this house that Arthur must unravel the secrets of the key and discover his true fate. Dun, dun, dun. All right. Where to start? So characters. We have our main character is Arthur. I'm trying to think. If it ever actually says his exact age, but
I think he's in 7th grade.
Okay. I was thinking middle school, but I couldn't remember for sure. Kind of average kid, but has asthma, new town, and doesn't really know anybody, doesn't really fit in. Seems like he gets picked on a bit, right? Do you want to just jump in, or you just want to run down characters?
I think we should jump in because I felt like this book was a lot more plot driven than character driven.
Okay. Go ahead.
So as soon as I started reading, I was having major flashbacks to Hexwood. Because I already knew that this was another Arthurian legend-based book, but then all of a sudden it's like outer space and like weird stuff is happening, like time travel stuff, weird people, like some kind of organization. And I was like, is this really going to happen again? Because Hexwood was a little hard for me.
Yeah.
But thankfully, everything was explained much more quickly. I feel like I still didn't grasp it all pretty much until the end of the book. It was all starting to make sense. But up until that point, I was a little, I don't know what is the word I'm looking for.
Perplexed.
I don't know. I'll think of it. But I felt like overall it was very, very plot driven.
Agreed. And the Arthurian legend thing, I want to tie up at the end. I have lots of thoughts about that.
Okay.
But I don't know. It took, like, you pointed it out to me, but I hadn't started reading it yet when we talked about it. And I was like, duh, Arthur Penhaligon. What does that sound like? But I just didn't cue into that when I first read the back of the book. But yes, I definitely have thoughts about that. But so Arthur and his family just moved to this new town, and his mother is this amazing doctor that has to be on call all the time and cures everything. And his dad is a musician. It's a very odd family, and they all have odd names. I don't understand kind of where all that comes from. I found it was interesting. Arthur is the youngest of 7 children, and he is adopted, which I think is important later. But so he goes to school, and he has to do this running cross-country thing for, I guess, PE, and then passes out. Right? And then a couple of the kids take pity on him and bring him his inhaler. But this is when we have kind of this otherworldly experience where we meet characters from, where is it even? It's the otherworld.
The house? Is that what it's called?
Well, they come through the house.
Yeah, I don't really know what it is.
Further on, that we don't really know yet. So we meet Mr. Monday. We meet Sneezer, who is Mr. Monday's butler, and we meet the Will. And the will is text. It's literally a piece of a will, but it takes the form of various things throughout the book. And Mr. Monday is supposed to be in charge and control of this piece of the will, and he's not really. He's tricked into turning over half of his key to Arthur, right? The will comes alive and tricks him into turning half of his key over. And it's because Sneezer gets tricked by the will. I don't know if possessed.
I think it possessed him.
Is it? Okay. A little on the fence about that. But so this whole thing happens to Arthur, and he wakes up in the hospital, and he has this minute hand, which is half of Mr. Monday's key, and he wakes up in the hospital and doesn't know what's going on, and feels like this whole thing was just a dream, and he has to go and figure it out. He has to go on a quest and figure it out. And it's just shortly after that everybody in town develops this giant epidemic of some sort of unknown illness that turns out to have come from this other world, and he wants to save everybody. So that's why he thinks he's going on this quest, but he's just getting sucked into this other world, right?
Yeah. Because
of the will. Okay, so far, what do you think?
So yeah, the whole beginning part, I was just trying to figure out if this was going to be like Hexwood or not. Because that book involved, I had to pay really close attention and still not know what was going on. And so this didn't turn out to be quite that way. But it kept reminding me of it just with the modern things mixing with these kind of sci-fi-ish fantasy type things. I was actually pretty disappointed that Leaf and Ed just had nothing to do with the whole rest of the book after the beginning when they're nice to Arthur. And they seemed like they were just going to be around to help him, and then he just left them and never saw him again, except for that time when he saw Leaf crying in her house.
And didn't even stop to talk to her. He was like, don't have time, can't chat.
Yeah, so that was a little disappointing to me. I don't know. I thought the whole scene with the librarian was pretty cool, that she tried to help him, even though it didn't really work out. I thought she was a cool character.
Yes. Yes, that is true. There's probably a lot of symbolism in that, right?
I think so.
Yes. I love librarians. And I love that he Arthur goes back at the end. He goes back and he's like, wait, I don't remember her name, but Mrs. So-and-so, she's by herself in there. You have to rescue her. Mm-hmm. So, I don't know. I feel like even if you hated your teacher, you always loved the librarian, right? Mm-hmm. Well, I love it. So when Arthur finally goes to the house that only he can see, and he falls into this kind of void, mm-hmm. And into this magical realm that he doesn't understand what's going on. Everybody's dressed in what I imagine is sort of Charles Dickens time clothing, mm-hmm. And not just clothing, but the whole setting. Uh-huh. The buildings and everything. He meets Miss Susie Turquoise Blue, who ends up being sort of his sidekick / helper through the rest of the book. And is having this whole out-of-world experience, I think, pretty much the same as we are when we're reading this. What is going on? And how are these things happening? And this is just not real. Mm. And then he gets to meet the will properly, or as properly as you can, because he's in the form of a frog. What did you think of him being in the form of a frog?
I think I was still a little confused as to exactly what the will was. It made a lot more sense by the end of the book, but still not completely, which I think is probably intentional. Since it's only part of the will, it wouldn't really make a lot of sense just by itself. So I'm hoping, well, I don't know if I'm actually going to read all the rest of these books right now, but if I ever do come back to it, I'm hoping that the will be complete at some point.
Yes, I'm sure it will make more sense with all the parts. You have to finish it eventually. You have to. You finished Moby Dick.
I know. I think that's why I don't want to finish it right now.
I mean, that's it. I think there's more to him being a frog than I've put my finger on, but it's bugging me, and I feel like somebody else has had an aha moment that's read this, but there's something to him being a frog, and I haven't figured it out. Basically, Arthur goes through all these different challenges, and Mr. Monday is the bad guy, right? And he has helpers who are dawn, noon, and dusk. And they are after him throughout the book, and he gets thrown into a giant coal pit at one point. Mm-hmm. And thinks he's done for, but he meets Pravuo. Was that how you would say it?
Sure.
Okay. He meets Pravuo, who's a collator, and he thinks that Dusk may or may not be on his side, and he thinks Pravuo may or may not be on his side, and he's not really sure who's helping him and who's not helping him, and if Susie Turquoise Blue has abandoned him, and he's kind of in this kind of mess. Mm-hmm. When he has to go meet the old one. Or he decides to go meet the old one, which I kind of like, because he's on his own and he decides to kind of take the risk. I don't know what else to do, but he takes challenge on himself. And he starts thinking through the problems for himself. So he meets the old one, which I quite like. So I don't know. I have strong opinions about the old one, but what do you feel about him?
I don't know. You could tell that he used to be important, but not exactly who he was. And I'm still not entirely sure about the hierarchy of whatever this place is.
Okay.
I think at this point of the book, I was kind of like up until this point, Arthur had just been chased by all these different people. There were the dog-faced things, the fetchers. There were the snake. Oh, when he first got into the house and met Susie, was that the dog-faced people or something else that came?
The Nithlings, I think. They're like the dog-faced things, but they're...
Okay. So yeah, there's some other kind of thing. So he'd already been chased a bunch by those, and then dawn, noon, and dusk chasing him, and like all this stuff, and like he doesn't know who to trust, just like you said. I think by this point, I knew something bad was going to happen, and I didn't know if he was going to do it, if it was going to be the old one. So I don't know. I don't think I have anything else on him. What did you think?
Okay. So Arthur's on this quest.
Mm-hmm.
He's on this quest and this journey. And like, I like that like I said, that he went and he faced the old one. Like up till now, like you said, he's been chased by everything and running from it, and just kind of desperately flailing around, I think. But this is the point that he decides to take charge and go face whatever monsters are there, right? Mm-hmm. Like everybody has said, don't go see this person. Or, don't go see the old one. Don't go see the old one. It's bad. It's terrible. Don't do it. But he decides, like, I'm going to go take on whatever it is, no matter how bad it is, because I've got to figure something out. And I feel like whether you go back to Arthurian legends or whether you go to whatever other, like mythic legends, if you have the hero like that goes up against, whatever that monster is, like that's where he gets his truth, his answers, his whatever. So I felt like he was going to come away with whatever he needed, even though that person wasn't really going to be trusted. So I didn't expect him to be a trustworthy character, but I felt like he was going to walk away from it and have what he needed to move to the next step. And the other thing that really struck me is like, okay, so it's like we're not in the house anymore. We went through or we're kind of, I don't know. But we know now, like, there's an architect. There's somebody that created all of these things. And they created it out of nothing. And then they left the will and they left other people in charge and they went away. Mm-hmm. And we're told that the old one interfered with the architect, and that's why he's in this hole in the ground, bound up, right, with these things happening. And so I think there's a certain parallel to like the Christian, like God created the world from nothing. And so we have like the second realms. And then what happened, like Satan interfered and was cast out, and Satan is bound. And so I think there's like a certain symbolism to that as well.
Yes, I did notice that overall, not just specifically that part, but throughout the whole story, I got that impression. And that's why it actually reminded me of the Golden Compass, is because those kind of religious themes are all intertwined into that story as well. Kind of in a similar way, I felt to this one. Because at one point Arthur is like, he's thinking about something like that, about that it seems like kind of religious to him, but that he never really went to church and isn't religious, and he was kind of glad. Anyway, it's
I forgot about that part.
Yeah, it's It reminded me very much of the Golden Compass. So we're gonna read those.
Yeah, we'll get to those ones because I haven't read them yet. So yeah, I like that. I don't know, parallels, and I think that kind of layers your story so that there's more that you can walk away with your experience. In the end, Arthur uses the improbable stair to make it up to where Monday is. I love the improbable stair. I think it's, what do they call it? The landings, where you just pop out in different places. That's really something. Yeah. Especially when, like, the last couple landings are so personal. Like when you find out where Susie Turquoise Blue's history is, and where she comes, like where did the Pied Piper children come from, and her family, and how he still saves her, like he doesn't let her wander off. And then the last one is Arthur's home, but he doesn't stop to look around. It's like what's happening in Arthur's home right now, but he knows you just have to keep going before he gets up there. But I love that you have to, like, the idea of having to use imagination to create the stairwell. You know, like how he like bent the blade of grass. Yeah. And stuff like that. So he finally gets up and then he fights. There's like the big battle with Monday. And he wins. And he has the hour hand now. And he finally does the little ritual. So he has them both and they become a sword. It's that Arthur thing.
A magic sword.
A magic sword, not a clock, but a sword. And I feel like this kind of went back, like this point of the story goes back to the warning that the old one gives him. Like he gives him a warning about, like, I don't know, it's something about if you, like, you can go and you can do this, but better watch out because the will make you serve it. Right? And you can see, like, at this point, the will is trying to tell him, no, you have to do this. You have to stay. You have to take care of things. You have to, and he's like, whoa, I'm just a kid. Like, I want to go with my life. So I thought it was interesting that, he gave him that warning, and it was, you kind of see it kind of happening. And I think too, like, you get past this book, I'm sure it comes again, like more into play. So then so you have dawn, dusk, and noon all change places. Right?
Oh, well, I think Dawn gets to stay as Dawn.
Oh, you're right.
She really did anything anyway.
Yeah, but with, like, I'll keep an eye on you. Dusk gets to move to noon, and noon gets moved to dusk. So I guess dusk is a position of less power or whatever, but I didn't realize it till the end, until she gets demoted. So I think it's going to make that confusing for the next book, because I'll be like, wait, who? Which one?
Yeah.
I love that Susie Turquoise Blue becomes Noon's afternoon tea, but it's not the afternoon tea. Did you get that? The will says the position is called Noon's Tierce.
I've heard the term tierce before, but only because there's a certain kind of organ pipe, and it's called the tierce pipe. But I don't know what the word means. I will look it up right now, unless you already did.
I did, but you can look it up if you want. There is a musical, like, term.
Oh, yeah. Tierce, another term for terse. Definition 2, an organ stops sounding 2 octaves and a major third above the pitch of the diapason. Let's see, a sequence of 3 cards of the same suit. Oh, it's a fencing term, the third of 8 standard pairing positions. A cask containing a certain quantity of provisions, the amount varying with the goods.
Oh, I didn't see that one. I guess
That
an
one was
opposite measure.
archaic.
So in looking at all of those, I think like there's an obsolete one which means literally a third, which I think there's a play on words. I think there's like literally like the afternoon tea joke, right? So you're coming afternoon being third.
I think she's before noon.
Well, he said it would be noon's assistant.
Oh, okay.
Which would make him, you know, like halfway between lunch and dinner.
Right.
But I think it's the fencing reference. Because, which I know nothing about fencing, but the definition I found said the third position from which a parry or thrust can be made in fencing. And he left her to keep a mortal eye on everybody and to help him kind of keep tabs on things. And so I just thought, like, I think it's a matter of like being in a position of power to kind of help him when he's not there. So I was like, oh, I love words. So I was just being a little nerd over here, but that was my 2 cents for having not read the rest of the books. I was like, I wonder if that's what that means.
Yeah.
And I love finding new words too. Like I was like, I don't know what that means. I have to get the dictionary now. So, and then, so I guess there's some symbols there, right? So we have the sword. We're going to go with Arthurian legend then. We have Excalibur, right? It's pulled the sword from the stone. What other I guess crossovers did you see?
Well, there's a pretty obvious one when he kind of knights whatever his name is that was down in the coal pit.
Yes.
Yeah. When it got to that part, I was like, oh yeah, this is it. Even though he turns out to be a traitor, that still kind of goes along with Arthurian legend. I think that was probably the biggest one that stood out for me. What others did you see?
Well, there's his name. There's the fact that the kingdom has been usurped by everybody else. And he's a child when he comes into it and has to go on a quest to retake his kingdom, right? There's Excalibur, which he has to, retrieve, basically. I thought it was really interesting. I was trying to look up who was the first knight that was ever knighted by Arthur. And I couldn't find it exactly. I don't know if it was Lancelot or not. But so Lancelot's the traitor, right? Lancelot's the one that goes off with his wife. Percival, I looked up because Provel made me think of Percival. And I went and looked up Arthurian knights and looked up the names, and I thought, yes, that's the one. So I looked up Percival, and he is like always true and faithful. Never, and I thought, like, I just think it was a trick of names. I think it was making you, like, if you were familiar with the legends, then you would say, oh, this guy is going to be good. He's going to help him out. And then he, like backstabbing. I think it was just a trick. I think it was just fun on the author's part, to flip it around.
Yeah, that does make sense. I was going to say something else. I was thinking of it. I don't know what it was. Do you think, well, kind of in the same vein, even though the old one was kind of scary, do you think he's like the Merlin type character? Or there may have been several, because it seems like he was getting advice from like all kinds of different places.
It is. So I was trying to kind of place Merlin and Uther and Guinevere and Lancelot. Those are like the key people that I was trying to like fit, but I feel like there's not, like maybe somebody, like I said, maybe somebody else saw the frog and was like, huh, I know what that means. Like maybe somebody else only reading this much would like be able to pin them all, but I feel like I haven't read enough to like pin them down yet. Because like, wasn't it weird that the will chooses, like their new form that they choose is like this elegant woman with platinum hair and a beautiful, gorgeous voice? Not, you know what I mean?
Well, she had a gorgeous voice at first, and then it went back to being the frog voice.
Right, yeah. I feel like there's something weird about that. You know, like why that voice? Why that, you know? And I wonder, I feel like the betrayal is going to come in between Susie Turquoise Blue and the will. Like in the next, like that's where he, like those are going to be the two that he relies on constantly. And that's where the betrayal is going to happen, which means one of them is Lancelot and one of them is Guinevere. If we're holding, like, you know, that's if Garth Nix is following it super strict, which like who's to say, you know what I mean? Like he could just use it loosely or whatever. But I don't know. I don't know where the old one fits.
I remembered what I was going to say before. It was that, what is his name? The guy he met in the coal pit?
What?
The guy he met in the coal pit?
Provuel.
It turns out at the end that we think he's probably a spy for one of the Morrow days.
Yeah.
So I think, I don't know, he's bad, but I still kind of think that maybe he'll redeem himself at some point. But I don't know.
Is he maybe Arthur's son? You know, like, what's his name? Starts with an M.
Mordred?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Because it goes back and forth. I don't know. There's so much potential.
Well, then who's going to be Morgana?
I don't know. There's so much, like, unknown. We're trying to figure all this out. There's something else that came to mind. Did you notice what the will said was wrong with Monday, with Mr. Monday?
No.
He said, you know, Arthur and Susie Blue were talking about what is going on here when they got to Monday's portion of the house or whatever. Like, what is, and the frog, they were supposed to be being quiet or something, and the frog got really loud. And he said, it's sloth. And he went on this big rampage about slothfulness. So of course my first thought was like the seven deadly sins, right? Which I got super excited about because I don't know about your copy, but my copy of the book has this, like, I don't know if you can see it, has this like afterword. Oops,
yeah,
sorry.
I did as well.
Did you read it?
I flipped through it. I did not read the whole thing.
You should read it.
But I know it talked about like the mythology behind Days of the Week, and it talked about the 7 deadly sins.
It's fun. It's very interesting. And it talks about like symbolism of numbers. And it talks about, I was interesting because the days of the week I just didn't cue into. And I kind of was like, why 7 days? But then when we hit the sloth part, I was like, that's why. There's going to be one deadly sin for everyone. So then when I got to the back of the book, I was like, ha ha ha, I knew it. I love when I'm clever enough to figure out that stuff because I never am. So it was really fun when I read through this part because apparently the 7 deadly sins originally written by Pope Gregory were, in order of severity, pride, envy, anger, sadness, avarice, gluttony, and lust. And then in the 17th century, somebody replaced sadness with sloth. Interesting, it used to be sadness. But so then they, like in the back of the book here, they quote the section of Dante's Inferno that talks about what the punishments are associated with each of the sins. And guess what the punishment is for the person that exhibits sloth?
I know I read it, but I don't remember what it was.
He'll be tossed in a snake pit.
Yep.
Which is what happens to Mr. Monday. So then I went through them all and I was like, is this what's going to happen to everybody? And I also noticed he didn't put them in order, because then the order would be pride first. So I wonder what order they're going to be in.
I don't know.
So
maybe he's saving pride for Sunday.
Maybe.
Because some people count Sunday as the first day of the week, and some people count Monday as the first day of the week.
That's true.
And so if the series is starting on Monday, then Sunday will be the 7th book. What is the punishment for pride?
Pride is broken on the wheel. Which is that like, what do you call that?
The clock.
Like the rock or the rack kind of thing. But yeah.
Maybe it's the clock, because the old one is like changed to the clock and it like stretches and just like a rack. Maybe the old one is Sunday.
Maybe. Maybe. Or maybe whoever it is will get caught up on there with Sunday and get torn up. Some of them
actually really creepy. What did you think of those clockwork people?
Okay. That, like I was already weirded out and a little over the edge with them at all, but when they left the clock face, that pushed me over the edge. I was like, okay, done. We can just like skip ahead. And this is when I started having big questions about I was over Probwell when he was like, they're fine. He'll move on to somebody else. He didn't really care about them.
Yeah.
Like, oh, great, we can get down now. No. I did think it was interesting that he said in the past, the things in the clock got him, but they were vultures, which means something changes about the clock. It's not always the same. But still gross.
Yeah, I think it was a little Greek mythology moment.
Oh, I didn't even think about that. Yeah.
Well, and especially when he was like, right now it's his eyes, but it used to be his liver. Because isn't that the guy from the original myth? Is his liver gets eaten out?
Is that?
I don't know. We'll have to find out. Maybe we can talk about it on Goodreads.
Greek myth. I know the eyes. I'm gonna have to look that up.
Yes. Prometheus is the
liver
Titan who was punished for stealing fire. And let's see, I'm trying to scroll down to what his punishment was. Chained to a rock for eternity, where his liver is eaten daily by an eagle. Only to be regenerated by night.
All right, so whose eyes?
I don't know.
Because that's got to be Prometheus, right? I feel like, I don't know, I read the Odyssey a million years ago and I feel like it's something from there, but I'm not sure if that's accurate or not. I'm going to have to go look it up. We'll see.
Mm-hmm.
We'll come back to that. This just all made my day. Like all these layers upon layers, that just adds even more beautifulness. That's why the frog is bugging me. And the extra knights or the extra characters from Arthurian legend, because I know there's more. Ed and Leaf, I read the synopsis of the next few books, just the like paragraph synopsis, and I know they become, at least Leaf I know comes back.
Oh, good.
And so then that makes me like, okay, what's, I really am going to have to pick these up and finish them. I shouldn't have started a Garth Nix series. So I don't know. We'll see. I love about, like, I think the will is awesome because the will is supposed to be text, the way we leave a will, right?
Mm-hmm.
We leave a living will.
Mm-hmm.
And the will comes to life.
Mm-hmm.
And we talk about having a will, as in like I have a, like where there's a will, there's a way. Like, so I just feel like the fact that the will becomes a character takes in all those meanings of the will. So it's like one of my favorite little plays on words in the whole book. So, and then so the book that I wanted to show you that I didn't remember to bring down is I picked it up at the library. Apparently this is a thing like all the schools are using, but I'm old and I don't know, this came around after I left school, was how to read literature like a professor.
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen that anywhere?
No.
The library has like 20 copies of it. And I was like, that looks interesting. Because I'm like in the nerd section of the library. And my kids are looking at me like, okay. It is the funniest book ever. I'm like 2/3 of the way through it. It's so interesting. It, like the first edition, the one that I have, apparently there's a newer one, which is the one I'll have to get. But it has like a giant magnifying glass. Like the whole front is a magnifying glass. And it's written, I don't remember the author's name. It's a literature professor. It's like a university literature professor. And like each chapter is some way that literature professors make sense out of literature. And it's just very conversational and very much like, it's so to the point, and it just makes reading things like, it's what I love. It's just what I loved about being in literature classes. But it's just awesome. It's awesome. So I've been reading it and I've been thinking, that's right, I love this stuff. And that makes sense. Why didn't I think about that? Or that's right, I remember, whatever. Or that is true. I've learned that in my own reading, whatever. I'm having all these like, moments with this book, and thinking this guy is a genius, and everybody should read this book. And then I read the Garth Nix book and I was like, see, it's right here. There's another one, it's right here. But it's brilliant because he talks about tons of literature, like everything you could think of, like in this book. So it was great for like picking apart some of this stuff too. So just had to throw that in there.
Awesome. I'll have to add it to my reading.
Yeah, you've got to read it. And I think he has a couple other ones since then, like one about poetry and one about novels, but I haven't picked those up yet. But this one is good.
Sounds awesome.
So, all right. Well, that's all I have. What do you have? Anything else you want to add for this book?
Well, I do, but it will kind of segue into the introduction for this next month's pick. So I really, when he was describing the organization of the house, it was kind of funny that all the job titles were like really long and funny, and like all the different department names and all of that reminded me a lot of Terry Pratchett
Yeah.
style, and also probably some other authors that I can't recall right at this moment. But it reminded me of that. Oh, Jasper Ford is one. It reminded me of him a lot also. But I felt like it was a lesser version of Terry Pratchett. Like it wasn't as funny to me as Terry Pratchett is. It felt almost a little forced to me. And I'm not sure why. Maybe it's just because I love the Abortion trilogy so much. Like reading this, I gave it as fair of a chance as I could. But it felt a little forced at moments to me, just because I think Terry Pratchett does it more naturally. But that might just be my own bias from reading the fantasy books first. But anyways, so for this next month's pick, I would like to read Good Omens by Terry Pratchett and Neil Gaiman.
Woo!
So, which I read the first few chapters of already, and it is hilarious and great. And some of the themes will kind of go along with Mr. Monday, from what I remember.
Okay.
So I'm excited.
Well, this one's been on my to-read list for a while, so I'm super excited. And I have really enjoyed both the Terry Pratchett and Neil Gaiman books that I've read, although they have way more books than I've actually read.
Mm-hmm.
So this will be great to cross another one off. So I don't have a copy yet, though, and I'll have to work on that.
Yeah, it's been out for a while, so it should not be too difficult.
It's gonna be hard to get. No, it's super.
Yeah. So yeah, you haven't read all of these books by both of these authors? Are you sure?
No, I'm positive. Well, just the Discworld books alone of Terry Pratchett's are, ginormous.
I read after we read Equal Rights.
We didn't
read Equal Rights. We read Weird Sisters. I read Equal Rights after that. And I need to read the third one, which is Abroad. That's next on my list.
I'm sure I will get back to them. What is the one? I read another one of his before we read. It's also Discworld. It's Going Postal. That one's really funny.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not a witches one. It's a different Discworld one. Anyways, they're both brilliant people. And I think I need to read their books more than once for them to for me to be intelligent enough to understand them all.
Yeah.
So anyways, super excited and totally looking forward to it. So thank you.
Yeah.
And we'll see you guys next time.
Sounds good.